born in Dublin, Texas, but that's all I know. I think they came in a wagon down to Johnson County.
He played basketball in high school, and he told me one time that there was no such thing as gymnasiums, indoor basketball courts, whenever he was playing. They played outside.
And his nickname was Goober P. They had a basketball team, and of course back then basketball, a high scoring game would have been 18 to 12 or something like this. And when they would get ready to pass the ball to one of the players, they all had nicknames. And they'd say, Goober P, and Dad knew the ball was fixed past to him so he could shoot it.
I do remember him telling me one time that he was playing baseball and he couldn't throw a curve when he was pitching, but if he picked up a grounder and threw it to first base, it would curve. So that's about all I can remember on his childhood.
She was from, I think the family was from Illinois, but she was not from there. She was actually born in Cleveland, or outside of Cleveland. And her dad was 1/4 Cherokee, and her mother was 1/2 Choctaw.
Mother only had less than a 5th grade education, but she had a very high IQ. You could tell just by talking to her, by her writings, her letters that she would write, the words she would use. There's no telling what she could have done with her life if she hadn't have had to drop out of school. The reason she dropped out was because she had such an ear problem. She's been really, had a real loss of hearing from an early age on throughout her life. She dropped out of school in the 5th grade and helped her mother keep house, various things like that. She and her mother were extremely close, probably closer than any of her brothers or sisters were to her mother. Dad married Mother about the same time my Uncle Morris married my Aunt Corinne. And so Mother and Corinne were really like sisters, even though they were no kin at all. They were very close throughout their lives.
I can remember a tent with dirt floors in it and cots, but that's all I can remember about it. I do know we were told we lived in a cardboard house, and we finally had to find the picture to prove that. But that was when we was out there, I guess the first time we were just babies. One day we went out to pick cotton, and that's when Doyle was just an infant, and he was afraid of cotton.
I was scared of cotton. I was afraid of cotton. I didn't even want to get near it, much less touch it.
So Mother would pick down one row while Daddy's picking down the other row back and forth, so they keep an eye on us. And I could play in the dirt and sand around there. But Doyle, they put a pallet down, a quilt down, and put cotton balls around the edge of that quilt. He wouldn't crawl off of it. He wouldn't get close to it.
And they would outline it with cotton, and there's no way I was going to crawl off that quilt. I mean, it was just like I was in a pen.
The next time we went out there, though, is during the war. Well, let's see, 1940. Well, I guess it was. I was almost 7. I turned 7 in July, and Doyle would turn 6 in August. So it was in that summer. And we moved out there. Dad, my aunt and uncle lived out there. They owned the Washateria. And they called and said that the plant out there in Midland, Air Force plant or bomber plant, and it was hiring. And so Mother and Dad just packed up, and we moved out and drove all night long to get out there. We got here just about sun up. And he didn't get hired there. He wasn't hired anymore. He got a job in a grocery store, stocking shelves and things like this in a grocery store. And Doyle started school out there in 1st grade. I went to school in 2nd grade.
Mother would take us to school and come back home, and I remember her pointing out to me where my room was, and right inside this door, and there was, one of those clocks like they have in the school hallways, and she'd say, "Son, now you can find your room by just going through this door and looking up at that clock, and your room is right under that clock. And I'm thinking, yeah, but what if I can't find this door? There's other doors to this, you know, when we go out for recess or lunch or something. And so, so when recess is either recess or lunch, I would go home. I mean, here I am, just barely 6 years old, walking from the school to my house. Now, it couldn't have been over 3 or 4 or 5 blocks probably, down a dirt road or whatever. I'd go home. They would have to bring me back to school. I mean, I did this more than once. Odessa downtown had a little bitty theater, and we lived pretty close to it. So me and Joel and Stan, my cousin, the 3 of us went to this movie.
It was that year we moved to Odessa when Dad thought he could get a job out there. And Doyle was in the 1st grade and I was in the 2nd grade. We started school out there that year. And we went to this movie to see King Kong.
And we sat right down on the front row. Well, it was scary. And so we came home early. We couldn't stay for the whole show. We got back, you know, an hour earlier than what we should have. So Mother and Aunt Nola or whoever said, "Why are you boys back so early?" So Joel and Stan says, "Well, Doyle's stomach got to hurting him. He got scared, so we had to come home early." And I think, in fact, all 3 of us probably were scared, but they blamed it on me because I was the 5 or 6-year-old. We didn't have grass at Rent House. We just had dirt, and we'd get out there and play with our little cars, and we'd take spoons and dig into the ground and so on, just have a big time, us and the neighbor kids.
We had spoons, we'd dig it out in the yard, and in the backyard, and I told Doyle to go in the house and get another spoon. And as he walked into the house, my aunt Corrine was in there. She heard him say, "My big brother wants me to do everything, and I'll just do it." That's what she said.
It was Christmas time, and Joel and I guess we got an allowance of a nickel apiece or something like that. Who knows just what it was, but we wanted to buy Mother something for Christmas. So we bought her a wash rag, and so that's all we could afford. And so we didn't want her to be able to guess what it was.
And we put a brick in there with it, so she'd think it wouldn't have any idea what it was. It was real heavy.
She couldn't figure out what we could be giving her that would be that heavy. She unwraps it and finds the wash rag in there, and she acts like she is thrilled to death over it. And you know good and well she had to know that we had done something like that. But she acted like she was really surprised, and she was just thrilled to death to get that wash rag. When I was 5 or 6 years old, and Joel was 6 or 7, we wanted cowboy boots. We couldn't wait to get us some cowboy boots. And so Mother and Dad told us, well, okay, ask Santa Claus. It was Christmas time. Ask Santa Claus for those cowboy boots. So we did. We always went to see the Santa Claus at Leonard Brothers department store because he was probably the best Santa Claus around. So we told Santa that we wanted these cowboy boots. A few days after that, Mother and Dad, for some reason, decided to go ahead and buy us the cowboy boots and give them to us before Christmas. They did, so we got our cowboy boots. Well, one night as we had been shopping in Fort Worth, downtown, back then they didn't have malls, you just went downtown Fort Worth, that was it. We left downtown Fort Worth and was driving back to our house in the south side of Fort Worth over on May Street. Well, we went by Mrs. Baird's Bakery, and Mrs. Baird's Bakery every year had a Santa Claus sitting in a sleigh right out there on their property, right next to their building, and we drove right by him, and Joel and I saw him. And we said, "Dad, stop the car. Stop the car. Why? Why, kid? What's going on?" He said, "We got to go tell Santa Claus not to bring us those boots. We already got them." So he did. He and Mother stopped the car along the curb. We ran across the street, got up there and told Santa Claus, "Santa Claus, you don't need to bring us those boots because Mother and Dad already got them for us." He says, "Okay, thanks for telling me," or something like that. Of course, our family, we didn't have much money, and when we got something, it was really a treat.
Back in 1946, I was 11 years old and Doyle was 10.
We were really poor, and Joel and I were wanting bicycles.
Mother and Dad said, okay, you can have one. When Dad gets his Christmas bonus, we'll get you this bicycle.
There was a bicycle shop on the south side of Fort Worth that sold used bicycles.
And went into this bicycle shop, looking around, and they had two pretty red and white bicycles in there that was within the price range what Mother and Dad could afford.
We couldn't afford new ones, so we were going to have to be satisfied with used ones, older ones that had been repainted, I think.
So Mother went back in the back and was talking with the owner back there, making arrangements to buy it and when to pick it up on Christmas Eve. And Doyle and I were looking at some blue Swin bicycles. It had chrome all over it. It had springs on the action springs on the wheels, and it was a beautiful bicycle, almost twice as much as those red and white ones were costing. And still Doyle and I admired them, but we knew better.
We couldn't keep from talking about them all the way home.
When Dad got his Christmas bonus on Christmas Eve, he got off at 3 o'clock. They ordinarily closed at 5 or 6. We knew he was going to go by this place and buy those bicycles and bring them home to us. We were on the front porch, anxious for him to get home, just waiting for him to get home. When sure enough, he turned the corner and came down the street and pulled in the driveway, strapped on both sides of that 37 Ford was those two blue Swin bicycles.
When we saw him pulling up, there were those brand new Swin bicycles. We were thrilled to death.
And that was our Christmas, and plus a few more things. Mother and Dad, that year for Christmas, he gave her some washcloths and she gave him pipe tobacco. That's all they could afford, because his Christmas bonus had to take care of Christmas. Yeah.
The war was going on back then, and leather and rubber was at a premium. And so they encouraged kids to go barefooted. We went barefooted to school all the time in the springtime, and girls and boys in the warm months.
We get up in the morning. We never put in a pair of shoes on or a shirt on. We just stayed all day long, all summer long, just that way. We'd come in at night to have to take a bath before we go to bed. Well, our feet be so dirty, we have to go in there and wash our feet first, and then drain all that water out, then draw more water and take a bath.
Dad used to smoke cigars and pipes, and I always wanted a cigar. I wanted to smoke a cigar, and I kept hounding Mother and Dad about it. And I remember getting a nickel allowance, and I kept wanting to buy a cigar. So finally, Mother, I believe it was, broke down and said, well, David, just take him down to the drugstore and buy him a cigar and let him get sick. I said, that'll cure him. Let's let him get sick. So I remember Dad taking me down. I buy this cigar. We come back home. I light it up and start smoking that sucker. And I remember Mother and Dad saying, especially Mother saying later, that I kept smoking it. And they were looking at each other and saying, I don't believe he's going to get sick.
Doyle smoked that cigar down about halfway down, and just puffing like a big guy. He got so sick he couldn't even stand up hardly.
And all of a sudden, I've smoked about half of this cigar and go in and throw up my guts. All kids in the neighborhood were making rubber guns. We'd take these inner tubes and we would cut the inner tubes about probably ½ inch across. And we had rubber guns where you would stretch the rubber gun from the end of the pistol back to the handle part of the pistol, and on the handle part we had a clothespin. And you'd stretch that sucker back, and then that clothespin would hold it. And when you mashed down the clothespin, it would release that rubber band, so to speak. And so we would shoot each other with those things, have war with them. And so we were up the street at a neighbor's house.
There's a honeysuckle growing on the fence. I laid the running gun over on that honeysuckle, just ready for somebody to walk up behind the corner of the house.
And all of a sudden, he starts screaming and yelling and crying and running in circles.
Boy, I got hit by yellow jackets.
And he ended up with about, I guess a dozen bee stings on his face and his head. He runs all the way home, which is about 2 or 3 blocks, screaming. And Mother put something, I guess probably put some baking soda with water on it or something, those things. And so he was swollen up.
Looked like I weighed 300 pounds. And I went to the movie that night, just as fat as I could be.
I couldn't believe he went, but we went to the Gym Theater down there, the only movie in Hanley, and some of the kids didn't even recognize him. I mean, he was so swollen up. My dad loved pranks, pulling pranks on people, especially kids. And so Joel and I were sitting in our bedroom, had a little desk of some kind right next to a window in our bedroom. It was Halloween, and we were studying.
Dad went outside and put a sheet over his head.
Went out the back door, kitchen back door, walked around to the window and had this sheet on. And so Joel was sitting about this far from the window. And so Dad starts scratching on the window, boom, boom.
We fell over a chair and almost ran into the wall, coming out, getting out of that room, hollering, screaming.
It scared Joel to death. I mean, he started screaming and hollering. Dad came back around in the house laughing, and Mother jumped all over him for scaring us like that.
Mother just chewed him out one side, down one side, the other.
I was in the 5th grade, Joel's in 6th grade, and these other friends of ours are 5th and 6th graders, and about a half a dozen of us, and we decided we'd pull this prank, try to scare the girls. So what we were going to do is we were going to make out like somebody was stabbed in the back. So one kid brought an old shirt to school. Another kid brought a board, like a plyboard, a piece of small plywood board. Another one brought ketchup. Another one brought a dagger, which you couldn't do in school nowadays, but then daggers were allowed. And so when school was out, as soon as school let out, we hooked them from the elementary school, ran to get ahead of all the other kids because there was one main street that most of the kids came down after school was let out and going to their various homes and so on. And so we ran down there several blocks from the school and had this one kid to lay down on the sidewalk or put this shirt on. Then he laid down in the sidewalk. We put the board under the shirt.
Block of wood, maybe 1 inch thick, 4 inches wide, and maybe 6 inches long. Put a block of wood inside your shirt on the back, and took a knife and stuck it in that block of wood. We put ketchup around it, and we were going to scare the girls as they come walking up here. So we're saying, man, this guy is hurt, this guy is hurt. We got to do something for him. And they saw right through it. I mean, the girls were laughing. We planned it ahead. We knew which kid was going to bring what. I mean, the whole thing was just a farce. We didn't fool anybody. We went quite often, maybe not every Saturday, but every often, we'd ride the bus downtown to go to the movies at the Liberty Theater. They always had a double feature down there, usually a Western of some kind. Wasn't time to move to start yet, so we went across the street to that Penny Arcade and started playing those games over there. And one thing led to another. We just ended up spending our money. And we didn't have movie money, we didn't have money to ride back home. And we had to walk home. And it was a long way home.
Joel and I had an uncle just 4 or 5 years older than us, Uncle Joe. Lived in Cleburne, grew up in Cleburne, and Joel and I would go visit Uncle Joe maybe for 3 or 4 days in the summertime. And so we were there visiting him, and we were going to go up to Cleburne High School. When we got up there was a little kid about my age. And his name was Penny. He was a boy, had a girl's name, but Penny. And so Joe was telling us, Uncle Joe was telling us, boy, that Penny is real fast. He can run. And Joel, that's all it took for Joel. I mean, he said, I bet he can't outrun Doyle. And so Joe says, well, let's just see. And so me and Penny, we line up there side by side, and we have about a 40 or 50 yard race. Well, Penny beat me. It was close, but he beat me. because I was pretty fast too, and Joel knew I was fast, and Joel just knew I was going to outrun him. He beat me about this much, and Joel couldn't stand it. I mean, he was a bad loser. Doyle, why'd you let him beat you? I can't believe you let him beat you. And so then Joel didn't stop there. He said, well, I'll bet you Doyle can beat him in wrestling. And so I'm thinking, God, what's going on here? And so Joe says, okay, let's just see. and so Penny says, no, I'm not going to fight. No, I'm not going to wrestle. I'm not going to fight. And I'm thinking, my gosh, I'm glad he backed out, because what if he beat me in wrestling? No telling what Joel would have done. Yeah, that was. I'll always remember that. Always. Joel and I loved baseball so much. We played it. We played catch incessantly. I mean, all the time. And we even got a lot of dirt, dug it up from, I guess, the backyard out there, and actually made a pitcher's mound. And if I remember correctly, we even scraped some money together and bought a pitcher's rubber.
I don't know where we came across it, but it was about a cement square, probably 4 or 5 inches thick, about a foot square. We found it somewhere, and we took it home, and we put that lot out there, and that was our home plate.
We stepped it off, measured it off, the 60 feet 6 inches, so we had it exactly regulation for high school and college ball and so on. And hour after hour, we'd be out there, and I would be out there throwing those curveballs. Those were fond memories, man. We spent many a time out in that backyard on that pitcher's mound and that home plate and that catcher's mitt. Dad had that little workshop behind our house in Hanley. And as we were kids, for some reason, we bought 2 white pigeons, and we kept those pigeons in that shed.
We would steal cigarettes from Mother's cigarette pack, not just maybe 1 or 2 at a time, not very many because she'd miss them. We'd hide them out in the pigeon coop.
Well, Dizzy Carpenter, a friend of ours, had come down, and the 3 of us were out there. I think the 3 of us were out there sneaking out there smoking cigarettes, if I'm not mistaken. And Dizzy lit up a cigarette, struck a match, lit up a cigarette, and flipped the match, and it hit right on top of one of those white pigeons. That pigeon started flying around, and it burned a hole in his feathers.
And we were so scared to death that Mother and Dad find out about what burned those tail feathers.
And for some reason, I don't think they ever saw it or never mentioned it or anything. They didn't know we were out there smoking. Baseball was my favorite sport. There was no question about that. I started playing it when I was either 11 or 12 years old and just loved it. Jowell, and I think that was probably mine and Jowell, both of ours, favorite sport. I played in what's called the Sycamore League in east side of Fort Worth. We were in a 12 and under league, and we had a great team for 12-year-olds. We were beating some 14 and 15-year-old teams.
We had a good team, and we were always close to first place. We played a team one time in the playoffs, and they'd about been 13, 14 years old and lied about their age. Things changed, weren't checked on like then. But I remember Mother filed a complaint because she said those boys raised their arms, they had hair under their arms. She filed a complaint, didn't do any good though.
Pitching killed me. I mean, it ruined my arm because I started throwing curves. I had a roundhouse curve, and I started throwing curves when I was about 12 years old. My problem was I didn't have a lot of speed. I didn't have a fastball, so I was throwing the curveball even in games. I was throwing it probably 75% of the time, and that ruined my arm. I mean, even it bothers me still today because I know I suffered nerve damage from throwing all those curves all those years. I started at age 12 and threw them. Was a pitcher right up until I was in college. Then I did not have a fastball, so I ended up about exclusively playing second base when I was college age. Joel was getting ready to go out on a date when he was in high school, and he was in the bathtub. We didn't have a shower; we just had a bathtub, and Joel was in the bathtub. Well, Don Taylor, our across the street neighbor there, across that little dirt road street, came over and while Joel was in the bathtub. And so Don goes back home right quick and grabs some ladder fluid and comes back into the house. We go into the bathroom, and Don squirts ladder fluid all in that bath water as Joel's sitting there bathing.
And then just threw a match in it and just flamed up.
And flames come up all over the surface of the water. I mean, it's flaming up. Joel's standing up throwing water. My senior year, we won the district championship. I was a return man in football, and we had a play, actually a kickoff return play, where I would head up the middle, and then we would either go to the right or the left, and everybody had their own blocking assignments, and all season long that kickoff return worked real well.
Leads at the 30, the 20, down to the 5, and crosses the goal line untouched. It's a 90-yard kickoff return, and the Greyhounds are up 12-0. Lee takes off like a rocket. He's at the 40, the 30. There's not an Eagle defender within 40 yards of him. Lee's on his way to an 80-yard Greyhound touchdown.
Coach named a play after me. It was called the Steamroller Doyle Lee Special. The ball was snapped through the quarterback's legs to our fullback. The fullback ran straight up the middle, handed the ball to the quarterback right there at the line of scrimmage, and I, on the left end, came down the line of scrimmage, and the quarterback would hand the ball to me, and I'd run around right in.
It's a handoff up the middle. No, it's a reverse. That's Lee turning the corner. He's got room to run. Lee's down the left sideline at the 40. No one's gonna catch him. He's at the 20, the 10, and in for the Handley touchdown.
I played first-string defense, but I was a backup quarterback on the varsity. And so we were playing Brewer High School, and we got ahead pretty good close to the end of the game. And so coach put me in as on the offense for quarterback. And about second, third play of the game, I ran about 36 yards for a touchdown.
Handley has a 3rd and 12 from the Bear 36. Here's the snap. Lee drops back to pass. Now he's in trouble. He's gonna have to run. He's at the 30, sidesteps one Bear, flees down to the 15 and into the end zone for a Greyhound touchdown.
Birdville High School was our first district game, I believe. They had scored a touchdown earlier. They were ahead of us 6-0. They had a good team with about 3 minutes left in the game. And if I remember right, I ran it for about 40 or 50 yards and was tackled about their 20-yard line. So then we eventually pushed it in for a touchdown with about 30 seconds to play. Now that tied it at 6-6. We lined up for the extra point. Willie Smith was our extra point guy, and I recall Stanley Scott, this big tackle we had, bent down and kissed Willie's toe before the ball was snapped. He kicked it through, and we won the game 7-6. We played Comanche in by district. Comanche had a tremendous ball club, and we kicked off to them, and they came down and made a touchdown in probably the 2nd or 3rd play, something like that, and went up on a 7-0. They turned around and kicked off to us. I caught the ball on the goal line. I started up the middle, hit the left sideline.
Lee takes it at the goal line. He's got some room up the middle. He's at the 20. Oh, what a block. Lee cuts to the outside. He's at the 35, the 40. Look out, folks. He may go all the way. Down the sideline. Lee's at the 45, the 40. Picks up another block. And finally brought down at the Indian 15. This capacity crowd is on their feet.
4 or 5 plays later, we punched it in for a touchdown. 7-7. Everybody thought, man, this is going to be a great ball game. They ended up beating us 60-7. That was it for us.
When I was 16 years old, I went to work for John Bill's Auto Supply where my dad worked. I worked on Saturdays, and then during the summer, and then holidays, stocking shelves and so forth. And then I continued working there. And when I got out of high school, I went to work there full time and bought me a 1950 Plymouth. Paid $845 for it.
Joel had a real pretty little Plymouth. He was proud of that car. He and I and 3 or 4 other kids, including Jerry Williams. Jerry Williams lived about 3 or 4 blocks down the street from us. I was a good friend of Jerry's, but Joel was not all that good a friend because Jerry was a year younger than me, meaning he's 2 years younger than Joel. We all went to Forest Park and fooling around and messing around and riding rides. They had a tilt-a-whirl out there, and so Jerry got on this tilt-a-whirl and rode it. Then he got off, rode it again, got off, rode it again, time after time, about 6 or 8 times in a row riding this tilt-a-whirl. Well, soon thereafter, we got in Joel's car and started back home. Jerry was sicker than a dog. I mean, he didn't throw up in Joel's car, but he hung his head out the window and threw up all over the outside of his. Made Joel so mad. Like I say, he had a hot temper anyway. Oh, he made him mad. So we pulled into this service station, and back then in service stations, they had air hoses and water hoses right out there with the gasoline pumps. Joel made Jerry, get sick as he was, Joel made Jerry get out and wash that car off with that water hose. Joel and I would go to all kind of ball games. I don't care what the weather was. I don't care who was playing. The Hanley High School football field was only about a half-mile walk from our house, and 2 teams were playing. I can't remember who they were, but I'm thinking it was just small teams, Masonic Home and Joshua, in a playoff game. I'm thinking that was the game, and we went up there to see it. I mean, it was cold, real cold, and it was damp. It had been rainy, and we went up there to see this game. I bet there wasn't anybody sitting close to us. I probably might not have been 100 people in the stands. We sat there and watched that game throughout that game, and as we got up to leave, our raincoats had frozen and stuck to the bleachers.
And our raincoats had frozen to the seat and they just tore. They were so cheap raincoats.
I mean, you gotta love football. You gotta love sports to do something like we did.
Boy lived next door to us, was still in high school, at Hanley High School, and they were having the Rainbow Girls, which is a subsidiary of the Masons, Eastern Star type thing. We were having a program at the Hanley High School auditorium that night, one night, and this boy next door said, "You'll enjoy it, why don't we just go?" So he and I went up there. We were sitting back here in the auditorium, and this girl came walking down the aisle on the outside, and I said, "Who is that girl? She looks a pretty good-looking girl." He said, "Well, I think I know her name." He told me, and he said, "I think her name is Marion Brown." And I said, "Well, see if you can find out for sure, and get her phone number for me." And I called her and asked her for a date. It was in August, and she was hesitant to do it because she thought some friends of mine, Bob Leach and Larry Fletcher and so on, had just put me up to it. And so she took it. She said, "Okay," but she thought I would never show up. And so we went on to Friday the 13th was our first date. And then back then going steady was a big thing. So September the 1st, I asked her to go steady with me. On September the 17th, I asked her to marry me. As a whirlwind courtship, 5 weeks. And we waited till June. Her mother made her wait till June because she wanted to get out of high school first.
I remember the first time I saw her was when we were having teacher orientation, like they all schools do for 3 or 4 days before school starts. I was coaching there at Bell, and at these orientations, our head coach wanted all coaches to set an example. So at orientation, all the coaches sat on the very first 2 rows, or at least I think the first row in the auditorium, where these orientations are taking place. All the other teachers, there was probably, I don't know, several hundred back behind us. And I remember turning around the first day of orientation and scanning the audience of teachers and Martha's blonde hair, bouffant kind of hair, just kind of thought, man, I need to try to see if I can get with her. And so as time went on, in Teacher's Lounge, we started talking, and that's how we got acquainted, that type of thing. That's where I met her. A few months down the road during basketball season, we started dating, and then we ended up getting married. I guess we dated for a half year or so, something like that, and then just got married. We were playing golf at Meadowbrook, just he and I, and it started raining, and it kept raining. We were determined to finish, and we did. We played, and there was, I remember I think it was number 7 fairway. We were going to finish on number 9, and number 7 fairway, the water was probably at least 3 inches deep. And we were wading through there trying to hit that ball in the water. I mean, it was something else.
So we walked all the way back in from way down back to the golf course. When we got in, we got home, our underwear was wet, the money in our billfold was wet. It was one big rain.